Last week, we discussed using a limiter on your master bus while you're producing your music, and why I personally think, in my opinion, this is not the right move. If you're curious to learn about part 2, I'm going to talk about compression, which usually people put right before the limiter on the mix bus. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, and welcome to Distinct Mastering. My name is Freddie. I'm a mastering engineer, producer, DJ, and president of Sleeping Giant Music. For over 2 decades, I've helped artists grow their careers, and now I'm here to help you with your music production skills. If you like my content, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. Now, let's chat about part 2 in our series about the mix bus, and let's talk about compression. Okay, last week, we discussed using a limiter on your mix bus while you're producing your music. If you missed that video, I'll leave you a link up above so you can check that out. This week, we're going to talk about the mix bus again and go a step further. So to preface, a lot of times people will slap on a master chain or something that they've got that they use all the time, every song. I don't personally think that's the way to go. Once again, when I master, I like to master with intent, and I like to take each song or album or track on the album as a case-by-case basis. That being said, how can a one-size-fits-all approach work? Especially if you're working in different studios or in different environments, or you're working with different sample packs. You never know, and it's always good to get a third opinion. So as stated, using a limiter on your mix bus, I think, is a bad move. Mind you, that's just my opinion. There's no right or wrong way. Let's get into compression. So a lot of times people will use an EQ, a compressor, and a limiter on their mix bus. Now, we spoke about the limiter last week, obviously, and now here's my theory on compression. If you've got compression on the mix bus, you've got to wonder why you might be doing that. I can understand if you're putting a compressor on the mix bus once you're done with your mix, maybe you want a little glue. But why do you need to glue everything together when you're really trying to mix? Part of what glue compression really does is it kind of softens your transients. And if you think about it, why do you need to soften your transients while you're working, while you're mixing, while you're producing? You want to hear those transients so you can get the right shape, get the right shape of the sound. I stress the shape of a sound a lot in my other videos on music production tips and tricks. And if you have the shape being altered on the mix bus stage, then you're not accurately representing your mix. Think about this. If my transient is getting softened in my mix bus, but I'm working on, say, a kick drum or a hi-hat, I might alter the transient to compensate. Maybe you take a transient designer and you throw the attack to the left. But have you thought that maybe your mix bus compression is softening that up? What if you just turn that off? Is everything going to be working the way that you want? You have to ask yourself those questions. One thing can affect the other. And if you turn that other off, the other thing might not be necessary. And that's really what mixing is all about. It's about finding how to make everything work together. But why do you want something at the end of the stage altering what you're doing when you're still at the beginning of the stage? That's food for thought right there. And so if you've got this compressor going, maybe you've got a little glue, maybe it's only hitting at 1-2 dB, and you're trying to get a compressor setting over here, well, now you've got this, weird pushing and pulling thing going on. You've got this compressor trying to operate, but you can't hear it with this compressor. If you do like to work with a compressor in line on your mix bus, I suggest you turn that thing off, especially when you're trying to do any transient work or if you're trying to do any compression work. Another way to think about this is if that compressor is working, and maybe you've got one that's working pretty hard, now you are throwing off your volume faders, because as you set those faders, without that compressor, it might not be sitting where you want. So if you're adjusting all your faders, whether that be on your console or in your screen, and then all of a sudden you go to that mix bus compressor and you change the release time or you change the attack time, now you've altered those settings. Maybe you changed the output, and now your whole mix is just thrown off. And so that's part 2 of this series, is to get you thinking concepts. This concept was about compression on the mix bus. Last week was about limiting. And next week, I'm going to go a step backwards and talk about why I don't like to put EQ on my mix bus until possibly at the end. So this is more of a concept video for you to kind of get your thoughts going and really start to think about why you might be doing something. Last week we talked about the limiter and why I don't personally like to put a limiter on my mix bus. This week we talked about compression, and next week we're going to go a step backwards and talk about EQ. And if you have any questions, shoot me a comment down below. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. Once again, my name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering, and have a great day.